Aloha. Long time no see. It has been a couple of weeks since the holidays, and it's so good to be back with all of you. And I'm excited to be here. Well, today is January 8th, 2025, and I am really curious how everybody's doing, how your trading is going, how your life is going, how your news resolutions are going. If any, I'm not a big fan of resolutions, but I still want to know if you guys are doing that, how it's going for you. First and foremost, of course, I want to thank our amazing sponsor, Opal Securities. They do have the best in class fee structure, guys, the best in class locate inventory. They are a very bespoke nature. I really hope that you will take a look at them. And if you want an introduction, please reach out to me and I'm happy to make that introduction. They're really special broker, and I really hope you have an opportunity to experience them and see what they have to offer you because I know it's quite unique. So, I am curious if I have any volunteers today for coaching, and if there is any volunteer, please raise your hand so I can bring you in, give you the link to come in. So please tell me what topics, like I understand sometimes people don't want to come in live and get coached on the spot, but don't forget I have a trader hotline. I'm going to give you guys that phone number now. But if you have a topic you want me to address today, then please tell me. You can put it in the chat box. I'm going to open up X to just see too if there's any questions there. Let me get to this spot right here, and then I'll put up the link there on X if anybody says, yes, Kim, I want to get some live coaching. So if you don't want to come in live coaching, but you want me to coach you on a specific topic, this is the phone number where you can leave your voicemail. It's 646 828 7736. 646 828 7736. And that is for you to just, vent if you have an issue and you want me to take it on or you just want to clear. In a lot of different traditions, there's a practice called spring cleaning. Mama Gina is one of the women who taught me this, where you just learn how to clear and get it off your chest. And it just feels so much better when you do. So that's what that is for, Trader Vent Hotline. Tina, so good to have you here. Happy New Year to you. And I'm so glad that you're here. Tina is definitely, I think, she has watched the most podcasts of anybody else in this little circle and community. Tina, thank you for always putting such fantastic comments on my podcast and for your support and encouragement and kind words. It makes a huge difference. I see everything, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you being so generous. So thank you. And on that note, guys, if you don't subscribe to the Wall Street Coach podcast, I hope you will sign up for it. Also, I got I don't know, I think I've talked about this here, but I think most of you guys know I have a vocal tremor. If you sometimes hear the difficulty with my vocal cords, it's because of this vocal tremor. And unfortunately, somebody on iTunes put up a very bad review, which brought the numbers down on our podcast, which were 5 stars. We're now at 4.8 because this person's like, this woman's voice is bothering me. So I hope my voice doesn't bother the majority of you. But because of that, I'm going to request, if you do like this podcast that I do, which I know today is live coaching, but would you please consider going on, whatever you listen to your podcast, whether it's Spotify or iTunes, to write a review. It would be great to hear what you think of it and also what topics you want me to focus on, what traders you want me to bring on, who are the people out there that are inspiring you. I'm always inviting traders to come on my podcast, but there's always some new guys out there I haven't heard about or I just haven't even thought about inviting on. So please feel free to always send me a DM on X, send me a message, Kim at the Wall Street Coach, like reach out to me because I'm listening to traders all the time for who they want to hear from, who it is that they are wanting to emulate or learn from or be educated by. So I always have like countless invites out there. The challenge is, of course, getting people on in this crazy time zone. Obviously, most traders working market hours, and then after hours, they don't always want to be coming on a podcast. So, Tina, you have such kind words. You've helped me turn this whole trading thing around. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Tina. You've turned it around, but your mindset and the shift around that is the power of mindset. Being somebody you, Tina, even in the speed coaching that I've done with you, in all the conversations or the questions or inquiries you put forward here, I've just been in awe of how completely comfortable you are with the discomfort, your willingness to be with hard truths. You just take them in stride. It's really impressive. And I just want to congratulate you yourself, pat yourself on the back, because I can say a lot of things, but unless the individual takes it, the trader takes it and implements it or sits with it, um, no change happens. So, I can't help but think back. I do on occasion have traders hit me up in X, and one particular trader was really struggling. And, I try to be a contribution. I can't be to everybody without just 24/7. But this guy was definitely having a very hard time. And I did speak some hard truths to him based on the variables he brought to the table. And he was not happy about it. So, Tina, that has never been you. And I want you to be proud of that because, look, I understand, and not everybody's ready for a hard truth, but hard truths, if they're delivered with love, look, I'm going to be very careful when I speak a hard truth to somebody. And it's always better to speak a hard truth with a person that you already have a relationship with, that they already trust you, right? Because look, a lot of people can have a lot of opinions all day long, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to address the issue you're in the midst of. But I heard him describe what he was going through. And the heart of what I heard was that he had yet to take 100% responsibility for the situation he found himself in. And that is going to leave somebody in a very disempowered state. And that's what I hope, if I get across anything in all the different live coaching that I do or conversations that I do, you cannot facilitate change for yourself until you're willing to take 100% responsibility for the position you are currently in. Now, here's the distinction, and that a lot of people get mixed up. They have collapsed the word responsibility with blame. And that is not the same. I never will say you have to take blame for the situation you find yourself in, but I want you to hear that responsibility is a radically different thing to stand in. All right, Kimber's world. When you're serious about getting the help you need, the hard truth is what's needed. I'm with you, Kimber. I'm 100% with you. And I want you guys to know that, a lot of times people talk about like, oh, well, the ego this and the ego that. I had one of my I remember being fascinated from the start about psychology in high school, and we had a college it was like college level psychology course that I was in. And trust me, I was not a student fully engaged in my standard curriculum. But God, that just shows like how if you get a kid's interest, their ability suddenly supersedes what my math grades were, so to speak. But I had a terrible teacher, I really did. And even my math teacher, I had to take summer school. I went from, I think it was like a D in math to an A minus, thanks to the phenomenal teacher I had in summer school. So the teaching can make all the difference. And that's true for so many traders. A lot of traders are traders who probably weren't being given the green light in school at the level that because they weren't fitting into that kind of very factory mindset type curriculum. And that's very troubling because myself and others that I know got the memo that they were stupid, that they were not smart, that they were dumb. And that was not the case, but the curriculum and the style of learning was not congruent to their way of learning. So, long story short, that psychology course that I took was specifically about I loved how he described the ego. He would say that there is a lowercase e ego and a capital E ego. And the capital E ego is sort of your higher self, the part of yourself that is going to come into play when you know you want to do what you feel your values tell you to do. That is a healthy part of our ego. And that is, I think, today, uh, not spoken about enough. I think there's some discomfort with being proud of oneself today, which is disappointing because we need to feel proud of ourselves. We need to feel pride. This is part of why I want to advocate traders, patting themselves on the back. But the place where it gets dangerous is if your ego, and this would be the lowercase e ego, begins to sort of depend upon external validation. Part of the reason that sense of self respect happens when you follow your discipline, when you follow your rules, is because your higher self feels like you have been congruent with your own values. You have been congruent with your own moral compass because that part of yourself is always watching. The place when somebody may say, "Oh, my ego got bent out of shape," that is the lowercase e ego. And what does that represent? That is where we have a tendency to be more focused on external validation than internal validation. And here's the crazy thing, because I've been doing this a long time, guys. You can get all the accolades, you can get all the highest office in the land and still not feel good about yourself because external validation will never satisfy as deeply as internal validation. It's certainly something all of us humans need. We need to be validated at times. We need to feel respected. We need to be seen. We need to be known. But ultimately, we need to know ourselves. We need to start to have a connection to being proud of ourselves. It's a healthy level of pride. And I feel some of that is wiped away. And so, all that to say that I want you to look out for that lowercase e ego, because when that hijacks you, you are going to you're about to pay a very high price. Now, it could be in your trading account, could be in a relationship, could be with the driver next to you that your ego's just got bent out of shape about. But the key here is watch for the lowercase e ego. Notice what its triggers are. One of the books I'm reading, I was spent a lot of time at Volcano National Park, which is where we had an active volcano happening the last couple of weeks. I think may have stopped on Friday. I don't know if she's back up, but I'm grabbing this book out of my bag here if I have it handy, because I just want to show you guys the cover and speak about this concept of ego. But remember too, guys, that it's really important that if there anybody who wants coaching today, what about you, Kimber? Come on and get some coaching. Sadly, it's way too easy to beat ourselves up than to be proud and pat ourselves on the back. So, Kimber, here's a homework assignment for you if you choose to take it on. That is likely because your inner critic, your inner gremlin is getting too much airtime in the noggin. So if you begin, first of all, I'm going to recommend the book. What's the book, guys? I always recommend Taming Your Gremlin by Rick Carson. Kim, if you haven't watched my interview with the author of that book, Rick Carson, I strongly recommend you do. It's just The Wall Street Coach is the podcast with Rick Carson. Watch that conversation and then get Rick's book, because the heart of what Rick teaches all of us, including me, is that if we have a tendency to beat ourselves up, instead of being proud, it's possible that the internal dialogue, the internal speaker we're listening to is not our true self, our capital E ego. It is the inner gremlin. It is the lowercase ego. And the only way you can find this out is if you just start to simply notice. Take a postcard, take an index card, take a Post-it, and start to write a check mark for every time you have this beating yourself up in your head. Every time you hear that, make a check mark. That is not going to be a fun exercise. You're going to be annoyed about 4 hours into it because you're going to be like, what the hell? That was not fun. But if you do that for 24 or 48 hours, what you will discover is that, oh my gosh, I am like listening to a bully 24/7 who is beating the living daylights out of me. If you don't see that, you can't stop it. That is the first step. So if you're game, Kim, I would say watch that interview with Rick, get that book. Oh, Tina, you're so awesome. Thank you. Tina is getting the link for the Rick Carson interview. She truly is the Wall Street Coach ambassador, Tina. Thank you so much. All right, so I want to talk about this book, guys. What happened to you? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing. It's by Dr. Bruce Perry. Oprah Winfrey asks him questions throughout the book, and he talks at length on each answer. But he does a great job of not using jargon, which anti-jargon. I read like, a crazy woman, but I really strive to not use jargon because I find it to be alienating and not inclusive. And so if I read a book that has a lot of jargon, most times I will not be a fan of that book. When I read a really good book that doesn't use jargon, I'm going to be singing about it from the top of the mountain because it is rare. And this man is a genius, so he could easily have slipped into a lot of jargon, but he didn't. And that does us all a big favor. So what do I want to say about this book besides the fact that I think you guys all should read it? And there is some jargon in it, but it's not done in the dialogue. It's done in the illustrations. He shows us illustrations of how our psyche, how our brains work, and especially what happens to them if we didn't have really securely attached parents, which very few people have had. And so the key here is to be able to understand what and how each of our brains respond at an unconscious level, invisible to us, because as traders, you guys are going to be consistently triggered just based on the nature of trading. And if you don't have awareness that you are potentially being unconsciously, invisibly hijacked by your own nervous system, you are potentially going to have cost. And I don't want that to happen. So I really hope that you'll consider this book. And I'm going to talk specifically about something he says in the book that I think is very powerful. Kim, I'm so glad that you'll do the homework. This is your official shake. We're shaking on it or high fiving on it, Kim. I'm really glad and I'm really proud of you that you took that homework on really quick. Well done, you. Well done, you, Kim. All right. So this is how the book starts. This is one of the best parts of this book. And I think it's so important for all of us to have this awareness. Oprah, of course, you guys know she's interviewed some of the most famous people in the world. God knows how many thousands of interviews she's done. And she talks at the start of the book how, she's interviewed multiple presidents of the United States, other government leaders, and Beyonce, and again, other movie stars, famous singers, so on and so forth. She said, do you know what the one thing they all have in common is? And, you're at the edge of your seat when you read this part of the book. You're like, what could every rock star, every movie star, every political leader, what could they all have in common? At the end of their interview with her, they all look and say to her, how'd I do? Was that okay? How'd that come out? Everybody from rock stars, Beyonce, who's unto her own kind of like silo, to presidents of countries and nations, all want to be seen, want to feel like they're enough, that they did a good enough job with her in their interview. Now, guys, if Beyonce, who surely seems to walk around like she knows she's enough, is asking at the end of an interview, how'd I do? Did I do okay? Then maybe it's okay. You and me are needing to know that we're enough. That's the heart of what that story is about. It is part of being human. We all want to know we're enough. We're all looking to make sure we did okay. And so, what I think is really critical, and what the book continues to show us, is that sometimes if we don't feel like we're enough, it isn't because we aren't confident enough. It's because there were experiences when we were babies that taught us we weren't enough. And it isn't about going back in time, because none of us can do that, but it certainly means we can start to perhaps extend a little bit of empathy towards ourselves, that some of these beliefs that are limiting, that cut us off from being fully who we know we're here to be, who we could be if we could just get rid of this limiting behavior or that limiting behavior, is due to some things that we had no control over. Now, let me stress this. You didn't have control over it then, but you do have the opportunity now to do something about it. Just reading this book, and I am almost done with it. I think I have, how many pages do I have left here? I've probably got less than 1/3, 1/4 of the book that I have to read left. So maybe 70 pages, give or take. Yeah, give or take. This book has healed me in innumerable ways. I've talked, minimally about the fact that my childhood was unusual. Let's leave it at that. And that I'm sure I've shared this, that I asked for my first therapist at 10 years old. So clearly, I was somewhat conscious of the fact that I needed to get some tools. So all I'm saying, guys, is I'm pretty certain I've yet to meet one person, maybe the Dalai Lama, and that the Dalai Lama's sister, Jetson Pema. My Tibet is her book, which is phenomenal. I produced for television years ago, and Jetson was one of the guests we had come on. Maybe her and her brother, the Dalai Lama, don't have some work to do on themselves. But so far, I've not really run across anybody. Majority of people have some work to do on themselves, have some stuff to work through, right? We're all works in progress as far as I'm concerned. If you're 6 feet above ground, you got some work to do. So the key, though, and this book is such a powerful guide, is to begin to understand, oh, I see. If I experienced some of these experiences when my brain was just developing, then it's possible I might now be more susceptible to a fear response when I'm in the middle of an unknown, right? If we can begin to each of us understand how we're triggered as opposed to just the why, because what he speaks to, just how the brain works, to get to the cortex takes a bit. And there is going to be these deep unconscious layers of our nervous system that is going to already be taking action, even if it isn't in our best interest, because by the time it processes to the cortex, we've already pulled the trigger, so to speak. And part of what he's trying to help all of us with, including his own journey, is that he's helping us to understand that these kind of trigger like responses from any of us when in uncertainty, when in fear, when in a place of thinking we have something to feel ashamed of, we are going to find our whole system impacted. And part of what this book did, at least for me personally, is it allowed me now to have some distance, some space, more space between an stimulus and my response, because I know I have my own trauma. I know I have my own default setting. I know that I have a tendency to go into a certain state, but I'm very aware of that now. And because of him and this book and a lot of the different things he speaks to, I'm able to just simply take some of the steps he suggests to give my cortex a minute to catch up with what may initially feel much more frightening than it actually is. But also to have compassion, because look, when you feel you've done something, just let's say, you make a mistake and you're like, oh, what a dumb mistake that was. But when you realize, wait a minute, my whole wiring, I wasn't the electrician in charge of this wiring. I am today, but not when I was 9 months old or 2 years old or 7 years old. There were other electricians involved, guys. So you're going to get mad at yourself if your electrical wiring is off and blame yourself? No, you have to say, wow, that electrician maybe didn't know what they were doing. Not that they didn't love you, not that they didn't care about you to the best of their ability, whatever that was, but electricians make mistakes sometimes. And the key here is for you to start to get very curious about the wiring in your own mind, in your own brain. And you have to realize that if you don't reflect on the fact that you are being constantly controlled by that wiring, you potentially will be angrier at yourself, frustrated with yourself, and here's the key, guys, the world around you. You will be coming from a place of much less trust that you can trust anything that the world has for you, including trading. And this is why it's so important for you to all come to terms with the fact, oh, I have a certain wiring. Let me get curious about that. Now, not everybody's going to come into coaching and not everybody's going to come into therapy or personal development, but you can certainly just read a couple of books today on how your childhood might be impacting you today. And even if you just start to peek in that direction, which you guys know I can give you like, one book or 100 books to read, you begin over time to start to really get to know yourself. And how do you get to know yourself? Well, it starts with less judgment. The judgment that you have for yourself usually gets in the way. The judgment I have had for myself, and I still fall into the trap because I'm human, but I have moved light years in the other direction thanks to the coaches I've worked with, lessons that I've taken on to practice to minimize that self-judgment. So I might find myself get hooked by the judgment, but then I notice it and I can put it down and get myself unhooked. That's ultimately what I want you to all be able to do for yourselves. And even if you do work with me ever as a coach or a therapist or work with anybody, you can't work with them forever, but the key is gathering the tools. Gather the tools on your own, gather the tools in a community of people, gather the tools from the books that are out there, gather the tools from the podcasts that are available. I've done, I don't even know how many have I done? Tina, you probably know better than me. I'm looking. Did I do 200 yet? I think so. I've been out here for like 4 years. So I can't even remember, guys, what my last podcast number was. I'm quickly checking my podcast number. What was I did? The last one I did was I don't know. My whole feed is all jacked up because I was looking for an old podcast I did from like 3 years ago. But look, besides my podcast, guys, there's countless podcasts out there. There's countless conversations about, what and how our childhood impacts us. And, you could be saying, oh, Kim, this is so annoying. I don't want to look at my past. I don't want to, that has nothing to do with how I show up today. And all I want to say to you is you're incorrect. That is actually not the truth. And now there is, there's so much scientific proof to how our brains develop based on the experiences we have as infants in utero in the first 6 years of life. Even the different things that he speaks about that happen to kids at age 10 versus age 8 months, those two children, two brothers who both grew up in very volatile circumstances, but the one young boy who was 10, he did not experience it in his infancy. And his ability to transcend so much of the trauma that happened to him was possible, where it was not possible for his younger brother, because when his brain was developing, which is what's happening for those first handful of years, those are the most critical times of our brain's need for security, need for attunement, a caregiver being in tune to us, connecting to us. And so if that is, look, some of you may not even know what you had as young children. You're probably conscious of some of it, but there are parents who go through things when we're infants that we don't even learn about. Sometimes we lucky to find out after they pass away, or we find out from a family member. But the key is, if you find yourself self-sabotaging a lot, if you find yourself feeling like you're always behind the 8 ball, there are lots of indicators, repeat behavior, costly behavior that even happen beyond your trading. These are the things that I want you to realize could be because of the wiring. And if that wiring is askew and is not as ideal as it could be, even just reading about it, understanding it, can change it, because it begins to encourage a much more personal and empathetic relationship with you and what you've been through. Having self empathy is one of my 5 practices. So here how where I'm coming from. I'm talking about 100% responsibility, which is not about blame, and I'm following it up with compassion. If you don't practice self-compassion, if you don't practice self-empathy, guess what, guys? You will not actually be able to practice self-responsibility. Why? Because you will be instantly going into self-blame, self-annihilation, self-judgment. That is not the same as self-responsibility. It's a huge difference. But I think what happens is a lot of people practice self-blame, and they think and mix that up, that that is self-responsibility, but it isn't. It isn't. So there's that. All right, let me check out X to see if there's any questions. I see Shane liked the post on X, and Joe Green. If you guys are here and you want to come in for some live coaching, let me know. I'm going to put the invitation to come in for live coaching here. Oh, over 90 podcasts. I thought there was like 200. Clearly, I'm not paying attention, Tina. It's not easy to determine while watching. That's not including all the other content. That's true, because I have a lot of content out there, including all of these spaces. So thank you, Tina, for checking. I appreciate you doing that. All right, guys, I'm putting up the link to come into this space if you want some live coaching. Before I wrap it up, let me go into X. How many people here have gotten my new ebook that is completely complimentary, called The 5 Practices to Become a Better Trader? How many people have it? Tina, did you get a copy? I hope so. I hope so. You're doing all the administrative legwork for me today. So anyway, I hope you got that. Kim, I hope you got that too. And anybody else here, we've got, I don't know, 90 some odd people here. So please be sure you guys sign up for the free ebook. You go to thewallstreetcoach.com and you just have to enter your email, and we'll send you a copy of the 5 practices to become a better trader. I was very fortunate to get to interview Jack Kellogg, Brian Lee, Mari Hincape, and who else is in there? Kyle Williams, Jason Shapiro. Great conversations. They all have so much wisdom to share, and they're speaking specifically to my 5 practices, which, they each have their own relationship to those 5 practices, their own stories, but those stories are very powerful, and I do feel they're going to be valuable for you. You're not slipping, Tina. You're so funny. Not yet. I'm slipping. You're so funny, Tina. You crack me up. You're not slipping at all, sister. You're not slipping at all. You got your hands full most days, I suspect. So yeah, if you haven't signed up for the 5 practices to become a better trader, let me give you the link. All right, no volunteers? What the heck? What the heck? Everybody's got their trading all figured out, huh? You guys don't need any coaching on it. That's what I'm thinking. All 101 of you are just killing it in your trading and you have no mental performance challenges. Is that right? That's good to know. I'm very happy to hear that. All right. I just posted the link for you to sign up for the 5 practices. I hope you sign up for that book completely free, guys. I wanted to do this because I wanted, some of those more famous traders to speak to their journey and to speak to how they integrate when they bump up against a challenge. I think it helps to hear your heroes speak about their own challenges, their own potholes, the places they have been challenged. Because I think it's easy to look on these platforms and think, oh, everybody's got it together, but me, not true. It's just illusion. It's just an illusion. There is nobody I know who doesn't have challenges. And they aren't always just in your trading, but in your life. Jack, you don't have a camera. All right. Well, Jack, if you really want to come in, just come in without the camera. But I try to have everybody use the camera. But if you're gun ho, Jack, coming in, come in without the camera, and let's take on what you're dealing with. Unless can you guys hear me now? I lost connection. So hopefully it's back on. I hope so. Uh, Jack, I don't know if you're still here, but if you are still here, I'm here. So you just need to use that camera link. I mean, it just says wallstreetcoach.net. So click on that. And if you tried, you got to try again because I got kicked off and I had to come back in. So hopefully you guys are still here and it's still working. But Jack, you can do two things. You can either post your question inside the comments there. It looks like you're coming in from YouTube, or you can just take that link and come through and not have your camera on because you don't have one. It's okay. So it's up to you, Jack. But hopefully, we have, it looks like we still have 128 people. So hopefully this is working. But yeah, my connection was lost. So I had to re sign back in. Um, Ultimately, I do this for your sake, guys. I want to be a contribution. Coaching is not inexpensive. So this is my way of trying to, be there for traders almost every Wednesday. So what I do is take volunteers who want to be speed coached, traders who want to have some coaching, and they come in and get what's challenging them brought to the table, and I coach them right there on live stream. And ultimately, this is about trying to get your mental performance to the best it can possibly be. If you guys are familiar with me, my company's called the Wall Street Coach, and I basically work with traders to help them end self-sabotage. Yes, I'm back, Tina. I know. I don't know what happened, but it's so funny. I've had a little Wi-Fi issues, which I never have. So I guess we're having some disconnection issues. I'm also curious, do we have any traders here in California? Hoping you guys are okay. What a horror story is happening out there. We had Lahaina, a big fire. I'm not on Maui, but Lahaina, of course, had their fire just not that long ago. What is it, a year and a half ago? Um, and it's just devastating. The images coming out of California are really rough. And I'm just hoping if any of you guys are there, that you're okay. Just again, evidence of how fragile life is. It's very fragile. Really, really is, guys. Like, easy to get caught up in our day-to-day, frustrations. And then you see something like that and you're like, oh, it puts everything into perspective, like not easy to complain after you see what some other people are navigating, which I also heard from a handful of different X accounts that some of these people had their insurance canceled not that long ago. So imagine having a, very beautiful home and you're not going to get your insurance you're not going to get insurance for it. Like that could be a devastating experience. And I guess I just want to say, like, life has this incredible diversity of what other people experience, what you experience. And it is hard to make a rhyme or reason out of it. But the key, I think, is to step into a mindset of gratitude, even when things are challenging for you. Find the things that are working well for you. Find the places that you can give gratitude. And that is discussed at length as well in this great book from Dr. Perry. He talks about the science of gratitude, the impact that actually changes our brain when we start to put our focus on what we do have instead of what we don't have. Now, I'm all about processing your feelings, feeling your feelings, not keeping them stuck inside. And just like we talked about earlier, the ego, right? The lowercase ego is easily going to find things to bitch and moan about. All right, so Jack says the struggle I have is still not being able to take losses. I get frustrated after the first loss, and after the second loss, I oversize, usually ends in a blown account. So, Jack, here's the suggestion. The disconnect is when a loss occurs for you, your sense of self likely is collapsed with it. The If any of us have a hard time being able to sit with loss, also known as mistake, a mistake, right? Or mistakes with an S, that is telling me it's possible You have an expectation of yourself to always be perfect, to always do it right, to always get the A. And if your identity, right, because this gets formed when we're very young, is attached to thinking, I'm going to just be full throttle with you, you don't get love and belonging if that was how you experience things in your childhood. Then when you're wrong, then you would be hard pressed to now be comfortable getting things wrong. Ultimately, not being able to take a loss is not being able to be with you being fallible, you being human, you being imperfect. Why would anybody potentially have difficulty with that? Well, at some point along the journey, that person likely would have been shamed for not being perfect, whatever that person's interpretation of perfect meant. So I would say the key here is you're going to need to take a really hard look at where inside of yourself this expectation of perfection, this expectation of never making a mistake, this expectation of being perfect comes from. Because until you can reconcile with what's always going to be so, you are human, you are fallible, you are going to be in resistance to that reality. And guess what? This is Byron Katie's quote: reality always wins. So the reality is right now, you have your self esteem, your sense of self, your sense of value completely on the leash of being perfect. Now, here's the thing, Jack, unless you're from another planet, you're a human being. And if you're a human being, you're fallible. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be a fuck up. You're going to be fucking up. You might as well find a way to reconcile with that. Because if you're in constant resistance to what is so, it's like swimming upstream, man. It's like swimming upstream. So I would get that Taming Your Gremlin book, although I'm pretty sure I've suggested this book to you before. You might need to read it again. Get clarity on what these internal critics that are likely quite perfectionistic are saying to you. Where and what are the triggers for these inner critics? Because are being if you are enduring the inner critics litany of horrible things, you are going to get yourself even more triggered than the initial loss and be tempted to oversize and blow up an account. Because right now it's possible your self-esteem, your sense of self is completely tied to your trading account, which is dangerous. Like, I would be more worried about you betraying yourself than even blowing up an account, because at the end of the day, blowing up an account is one thing. Blowing up the relationship you have with yourself, um, that is non-negotiable. You have to have a relationship with yourself. So yeah, rough childhood is going to set us up for trying to prove we are enough, we are worthy, unless we heal. Jack, you got to heal. You got to heal, because right now what's happening is your whole central nervous system likely starts to go into red alert as soon as it sees, which is probably quite a distance before your cortex realizes you made a mistake in your trading. And that central nervous system goes into red alert. as soon as a mistake is made. Now, here's the crazy thing, Jack. That super sensitivity that served you as a kid, because you probably had to be on red alert if you made a mistake as a kid, because something was going to come and you were going to pay a cost, right? That was certainly the case for me. So I was vigilant in not making mistakes because the cost in that environment were so high, but your whole system is responding to the market as though you are still in that dangerous setting. Now, let's take a look at what you wrote here. You aren't in that much danger at the start, but your system has been hardwired to feel it is that terrifying, but it isn't. By the time you get to the second loss and then the third loss and then a blown account, yeah, now your whole system is kind of congruent with, oh shit, this is really bad. But what I want you to see is that the initial uh, trigger isn't in proportion to what's happening, but you can't talk yourself into this truth. It is a visceral knowing that has to happen, an internal healing that has to happen because, and this, I don't know if you've heard me say this quote, Jack, but I've said it here before. And this is a hard quote to listen to, but it explains a lot for all of us is we seek the teeth that match our wound, right? Is it any coincidence, Jack, that you now work as a day trader and that what happens in day trading? Well, every trader that is of any great success has continuously spoke about how that losing 50 to 60% of the time, if not more, is a day-to-day part of the process. So fascinating, Jack, that you have found yourself into the very place professionally where you are being forced to be with loss all the time, and loss and or mistakes are the very trigger that you probably are bringing over from your childhood, right? This is what we all do because what's happening, this is the very young version of you trying to finally make a mistake and still be loved, make a mistake and not have XYZ happen to you. But you're trying to get that feeling from an inanimate object, the market. That has to first happen within yourself because the market isn't there to heal that for you. In fact, the market is trying to heal it by presenting you over and over again with this truth that you're going to need how to take losses without having yourself get triggered. But you have to be with the honest truth that you are being triggered and you can't make yourself wrong for that. You have to say, wow, that trigger is my wiring. I had an electrician in my childhood make some mistakes with the wiring, and I am going to now have to become the electrician who rewires how I respond to mistakes because you now are a grown up, are in a position to heal these places within you. Look, you can try to do it on your own, Jack, but I don't recommend it. You can get the books. I can certainly give you plenty that I've read, but I would recommend you do this with somebody. Do it with a therapist, if not me, if not a coach. Find somebody to support you because it's hard sometimes at the start of these healing journeys to be able to look at yourself completely neutral. We come, if we've had any kind of abuse in our childhood, with a bias that something is bad about us, wrong about us, unworthy, that something somewhere fundamentally inside of us is broken. And that, of course, is not the truth, but it is hard to shake without somebody holding space for you. It's hard to see that all by yourself. And these books that I speak of can help with that. The one book I think, yes, I talked about this book today, Jack. This might be the book you want to read, but the book I sort of think might be a good book for you to start with is the book called The Drama of the Gifted Child. The Drama of the Gifted Child. And that's by Alice Miller. And that book is specifically about how children cope with trauma in their childhood, how children cope with the anxiety of knowing if they aren't quote unquote perfect, there will be a potential cost with the environment they're being raised in. And it's because of that drama that each of us, that is what that phrase means. Each of us are gifted. So, Jack, you're gifted. You're gifted at being vigilant. You're gifted at being probably somebody who has your ducks in a row because in your childhood you had to stay alive, so to speak. All of us that have difficult childhoods learned that quick. But what happens that Alice Miller introduces to all of us is that what is a gift in our childhood, what is a gift that helps us survive that, turns into a cross, turns into a cost as we get older because we aren't in the same environment anymore. We aren't in the same experience anymore. But our system, our wiring is acting as if it is exactly the same. And that, like in this experience you're having with your trading, is costing you. So, what served you once, all of us as kids, what was our gift to survive and navigate and, twist and, uh, you know, turn ourselves inside out to get through whatever we had to get through, um, becomes something that costs us once we're out of that household, once we're on our own. And that gift that served us in our childhood now starts to really take a toll. So, and she says this, Miller, nobody comes along, pats us on the shoulder, and says, guess what? What served you before, you don't even have to use anymore. You're in a new place. You're a grown up. You can fend for yourself now. You can get your own food, take care of your own shelter. You don't have to do this anymore. Saved your ass back then. Now, not so much. Nobody comes along and tells us this. I'm coming along to tell you this, Jack. So why don't you pause your trading, do some deep work with that book on that for yourself. Reach out to me if you want to talk about coaching. Oh, Tina, you're the best. Look at Tina. She's given us the link, guys, of the Drama of the Gifted Child. Thank you so much, Tina. All right, Kimber says, I had to sit down with me and forgive myself. Built up frustration with mistakes and failures, especially those that I carry over into trading. And then you're still working on it. Kim, that is so beautiful. I'm so proud of you. And I'm so proud of you for literally sitting down with yourself. That is what that inner child is. You're welcome, Jack. That inner child has to find out that we now, the grown-ups we become, are here to take care of them. But what happens is if we don't get this clarity that what happened to us as children happened to us, we can often carry this feeling of, I caused it, because that is how we coped. We couldn't see the only caretakers we could depend upon as the enemy because we knew instinctively nobody else, we couldn't survive on our own. We couldn't leave that house and get our own shelter and food. As kids, we know we're stuck there. We know we have to stay put because if we don't, we're dead. So we figure out really quickly, oh, I better adapt to this. But at the same time, if we're having things happen to us that are very dysfunctional, to say the least, then we're going to need to see somebody who's at fault. So who do we pick? That's right. We pick ourselves. We can't pick the caretakers because we have to depend on them. So we have to function in this environment. So we figure, oh, well, you know what? I- If I were this or that, if I was much more of this or a lot less of that, then maybe things will be better. And if we buy that and we never let that made up story that helps us cope go, then we're going to take that into the rest of our lives. 50, 60, 80-year olds who still have the story that there's something wrong with them when it wasn't nothing wrong with them. It just was parents who didn't have what they needed, so they couldn't give it to us. Kim, I'm watching you on delay, so I'm behind everyone. I'll reach out later. You got it, Joe. No problem at all. I'm glad you're watching. Thank you for watching. All right, guys. So I'm a little over time today, but that's okay. Hopefully, Jack, that's helpful. All I can say, Jack and everybody else here, Kim, Joe, obviously, everybody listening, none of us are the way we are just because of our choices, right? We have the power to make new choices, but a lot of how we interact with the world comes from a lot of our life that we did not have a say in. And the key to feeling empowered about that hard truth is to simply start with more curiosity and neutrality when looking at yourself. If you come in with judgment, or if you already are inside of yourself with all this judgment, what happens if you simply put the judgment down? Not forever. If it really, you really want to, you can pick it back up at any time. But I'm suggesting give it a week off, a month off, a day off. What happens if you just start to operate from this place of curiosity and neutrality? Look, everybody here who's a trader that takes trading journal notes, you guys have to write everything down with curiosity and neutrality. You have to re-look at the trades you've taken. You have to ask yourself, I wonder what was going on for me then. Oh, well, it was because of this, and this. You're doing that anyway every day, hopefully, if you're a professional trader. So what is the extension? It's not going to cost that much more of your time and energy and effort for you to start to use that same ruler with yourself. How can you be more neutral and observing yourself with curiosity instead of judgment? The judgment's going to shut you down. It's going to put you into a contraction. It's going to put you into resistance. It's going to put you into complete like this. When somebody says, why did you do that? Especially when you say it to yourself. What happens? Your whole body shrinks up. You're like, I'm screwed. I'm in trouble now. Right. But if you go, I wonder what was going on for me, there's expansion, there's space, there's a place of, let me think. I don't what you know what happened? I made a mistake. I'm so afraid to make mistakes. I wonder where that came from. Has that always been the case? God, I can remember that when I was 8 years old. I made that one mistake and XYZ happened. No wonder I'm afraid to make mistakes. Not we can't always instantly name it, but if you start to get into that place of curiosity, things will start to reveal themselves. All right. So, what am I going to do? I told you about the free ebook. If you guys are interested in working with me one on one on a coach, I just have right now 3 slots open. If anybody wants to have that conversation, send me a DM, reach out to me through the Wall Street Coach. We can talk about it. But when those 3 slots goes, guys, that's it. It's been a very busy 2024, thank God. And it's looking like it's going to be that way for 2025. I am going to launch another small group. If that's something you're interested in, it's a little bit more affordable, then let me know that too. I am so glad that Jack brought forward his question today. Thank you, Jack, for being vulnerable enough to speak the challenge that you are having, because I can promise you, Jack, there's a lot of people on this call who are struggling with the same damn thing. You're never the only one, guys. It's really important for you all to know that you're never the only one. And the key of this community, hopefully at the very least, is for you to all see that, like, oh, wow, I'm not the only one dealing with that. No, you're not. All right. I always say be kind to your mind now more than ever. And I will see you guys hopefully next Wednesday. Hui ho, which means until we meet again.